afternoon, everyone. You're tuning into the Wakefield Village Public Scoping meeting. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Wakefield Village proposal. The seeker or City Environmental Quality Review number for the project is 22DCP008X. My name is Stephanie Shalou and I'm the Deputy Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. We truly appreciate your patience as we adjust to this meeting format and its challenges. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to attend this meeting, whether in person here or remotely. I also want to emphasize that we will hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and the meeting will remain open until we've heard from all speakers. We also welcome written comments and testimony through Thursday, September 2nd, 2021, and we provide written comments the same attention and consideration as those comments provided live at the meeting today. Next slide. Great. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for Wakefield Village. Again, the City Environmental Quality Review or seeker application number for the project is 22DCP008X. Today's date is August 23rd, 2021, and the time is approximately 2:01 p.m. Again, my name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division, or EARD, of the Department of City Planning. I'll be chairing today's scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as lead agency for the proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department will be responsible for overseeing the preparation and completion of the proposal's Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS. Next slide. And next slide, please. Joining me remotely today are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning: Olga Abinader, Director of the Department's Environmental Assessment and Review Division; Annabelle Meunier is a team leader in EARD; Evren Okur-Kajar is a project manager for the Wakefield Village proposal in EARD; John Brady in the department's Bronx office, Deputy Director; and Jatan Horseman, the project manager for the Wakefield Village proposal in the Bronx office. Next slide. We're also joined by several members of DCP in the hearing room and remotely that are helping support this meeting. Thanks very much to our team behind the scenes. Together, we're here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Wakefield Village proposal. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects to be analyzed in the upcoming draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. The draft scope of work is posted online at the Department of City Planning's website. Next slide. The purpose of the public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible in the environmental review. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Towards that end, the department as lead agency will receive verbal testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, the local community board, and the public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, which can be submitted through Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. Next slide, please. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those we hear today, as well as written comments we receive. After carefully reviewing all these comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and we will issue a final scope of work. It is the final scope of work that serves as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Next slide. Today marks the beginning of the environmental review process and the written comment period for the draft scope of work. No decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. Again, the purpose of the meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments about the draft scope of work, to allow the department to listen to those comments and consider them. It's important for all voices to be heard today. Next slide. I'll now focus on the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. The applicant team will make a brief presentation describing the Wakefield Village proposal. Then a representative from Sam Schwartz Engineering, the environmental consultant firm for the applicant, will provide a brief summary of the environmental review's draft scope of work. This will take about 20 minutes. During the second part of the meeting, the department will hear testimony from elected officials, government agencies, and members representing the local community board. And then during the third and final part of the meeting, we'll be hearing testimony from members of the general public. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's scoping meeting. Verbal testimony can be provided in person, online, or by calling in on your telephone. If you wish to speak in person at 120 Broadway, you may register either through the NYC Engage portal or at the front door here. Masks are required and seating and room capacity is limited by social distancing guidelines. If you wish to access the meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please do register through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. A link to join us and to provide testimony will be emailed to you after you've completed the registration process, and we'll add you to our speakers list. Next slide. When it's your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist if you're joining us remotely. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period where it appears that you're no longer in the meeting. Do not be alarmed, as you'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. You will be asked to convey your remarks, and to allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. A 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen. At the end of 3 minutes, your time will expire and you will be asked to conclude your remarks. Please do note that promoting speakers takes some time, and please be patient. Next slide. Here's some additional instructions for those providing testimony via phone. Again, please register via the dial-in participant hotline at the phone numbers that were listed on the screen at the beginning of this meeting. When your name is called from the list of registered speakers, you'll be given the temporary ability to unmute yourself. You do this by pressing *6. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number. And again, you will be permitted to unmute yourself and provide your testimony. I'll also note that if you change the mode by which you're testifying, either by leaving the hearing room to testify online or via dial-in, or coming to the hearing room in person, you do need to re-register and indicate the new method by which you will be testifying. Next slide. On to time limits. Speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to give testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. If you're viewing us on the live stream and testifying via phone or Zoom, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony and make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. Next slide, please. If you wish to submit written testimony, it may be submitted to the Department of City Planning. Our mailing address is 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention, Stephanie Shalou. The email address for the project is 22dcp008x_dl@planning.nyc.gov. This information can all be found on the NYC Engage portal and the City Planning website at planning.nyc.gov. And again, as a reminder, we will accept written comments through Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. Next slide. If you missed any of these instructions, please visit nyc.gov/engage for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. We will now, at this time, move on to the first part of the meeting. The applicant will present an overview of the proposed project. This presentation will be followed by the environmental consultant to summarize the draft scope of work. I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Schulman, and I'll be the first of 3 speakers this afternoon. I'm joined here by Nora Martins from Ackerman LLP and Kovit Saxana from Sam Schwartz Consulting LLC. Next slide, please. And the next slide. The agenda today will be to go over the secret lead and involved agencies in the development team, the proposed project, the discretionary actions and approvals, the city environmental quality review, and just lost our slide. Back to that slide, please. And the public comment period. Thank you. We'll begin today with the agenda. That was the agenda, actually. Now let's go to the next slide. The secret lead agency is this Department of City Planning for the City of New York for the Wakefield Village project. Next slide. The lead agency is New York City Department of City Planning on behalf of the City Planning Commission. Involved agencies include the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, and the applicant is Webster Leasing, LLC. Next slide. Proposed project is Wakefield Village, which is a redevelopment of a large vacant site that has never been developed before into 6 apartment buildings with ground floor retail and community facility space. There'll be parking under a podium deck that connects to the 241st Street Wakefield Avenue Bridge in the North Bronx at the city line. We'll get into more specifics about the square footage of the housing, retail, and community facility and the parking in a few moments. Next slide, please. Wakefield Village is located at block 5064, lot 7885, and part of 10. It's in Bronx Community District number 12, and the lot size is 4.65 acres. Next slide. The project overview is that this will be a new mixed-use transit-oriented development comprised of 6 buildings with approximately 1,172,760 gross square feet. There's up to 1,262 estimated units, with approximately 100% of the units intended to be income restricted among a wide variety of incomes. Approximately 27,746 gross square feet of retail space, approximately 13,484 gross square feet of community facility space, and approximately 3 acres of publicly accessible open space, which also includes a 2.3 acre open public park. 617 parking spaces estimated, and the completion of the project would be 2033. Next slide, please. This is a site plan which shows the development from the Wakefield Bridge going south. So on the right side of the screen, that is the Wakefield Bridge, where it connects to the first two buildings, buildings A1 and A2, and then B1 and B2 in the middle, and buildings C1 and C2 towards the middle of the slide. The park and open space is largely to the left of the slide, which comes to a point, and there are roads coming in and out of the site that will bring people off the bridge into the site, and parking will be below this level, which is in a podium deck below the site. The site is built on a podium deck. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the site as it would be appearing looking from the east to the west. The right side of the slide is the 241st Street Wakefield Avenue Bridge, and you can see buildings A1, A2 as you go to the left, and then B1, B2, and C1, C2 on the site, with the park at the furthest left part of the slide. Next slide, please. This is a vision of the site from the Metro North Wakefield Metro North station, and it is as if you were standing on the station looking south at the development. This is an existing Metro North station, and there's downtown and uptown northbound trains that serve to Grand Central going southbound and to White Plains going northbound. Trains service to Grand Central is between 26 and 30 minutes, and the same amount of time getting to White Plains, which is another major work area of this region. Next slide, please. This is a vision looking at the site if you're standing on the bridge looking into the development, where there's retail, and there'll be a supermarket at the beginning of the site, Wakefield Village. There'll be crosswalks, signalized crossings, and a safe entry for pedestrians and vehicles into the site. This would be a vision of the A1 buildings with the retail around it. Next slide, please. Here's a vision of on the right side of the slide is the retail plaza for the A1 building, and there'll be room for farmer markets and people to congregate and socialize. And on the left side of the site is the park and playground area at the southernmost part of the development, where children can play and people can sit on park benches, and it will be a nice addition for the public. Next slide, please. The discretionary approvals and actions are going to be described now by the applicant team, and we'll now turn it over to Nora Martins of Ackerman LLP.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nora Martins, and I'm a partner at Ackerman LLP, Land Use Counsel for the project. The project requires a number of discretionary city and state actions be constructed as currently proposed. Next slide, please. Before I get into the list of the discretionary actions, just would like to point out on this slide the existing zoning for the project site, which is M11 manufacturing, light manufacturing zoning. Next slide, please. The discretionary actions and approvals requested include city actions, including a zoning map amendment up to rezone the existing M11 zoning district to an R71 zoning district with a C24 commercial overlay to permit the proposed mixed-use development. It includes a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing designated area, options 1 and 2. Also includes several special permits, including a special permit pursuant to zoning resolution section 74-743A2 to modify applicable side yard height and setback regulations for a large-scale development, and a special permit pursuant to ZR Section 74.512 to permit an accessory parking garage in excess of 150 spaces. In addition to the above city land use actions, the project also requests state actions in order to facilitate the development, including a disposition of the portion of the MTA property, which is the portion of Lot 10 that is generally located between the applicant-owned Lot 78 and Lot 85, and then potential funding from public agencies. I'll now turn it over to Kovic Saxena from Sam Schwartz Engineering to describe the city environmental quality review and impact categories that will be studied in the draft environmental impact statement.
Good afternoon. Next slide, please. My name is Kovic Saxena, and I'm Principal and Director of Environmental Planning at Sam Schwartz Consulting. I will provide an overview of the draft scope of work, or draft scope, which provides a framework for how the draft environmental impact statement will be prepared. The draft environmental impact statement, which is also referred to as a draft EIS, will be consistent with the guidelines of the City Environmental Quality Review or SEQR Technical Manual, which is a standard guidance document for environmental analyses and review in the city. It is anticipated that the draft EIS will be completed and available for public review in 2022. A public hearing for the draft EIS will be scheduled at that time. Next slide, please. As described in the draft scope, the proposed project triggers required analysis of a number of technical areas. This slide lists technical areas that will be assessed in the draft EIS. I will briefly discuss a few key areas which are shown in blue. Next slide, please. Based on the net increment of residential development, assessment is warranted for the following community facilities and services: public elementary and intermediate schools in Community School District 11, Subdistrict 2, high schools in the Bronx, publicly funded childcare and Head Start centers, and library facilities. Next slide, please. As the proposed project would generate additional residents and workers, an open space assessment will be prepared for both residential and non-residential populations and their need for open space resources. Active open space will be assessed for the residential open space analysis. Passive open space will be assessed for the non-residential open space analysis. And the proposed project would also include additional publicly accessible open space, which will also be considered. Next slide, please. Transportation is another important consideration. The proposed project will result in an increase in the number of vehicular trips, increased ridership on mass transit facilities, and an increase in pedestrians in the vicinity of the project site. Therefore, the transportation analysis will analyze the changes to traffic, transit, pedestrian, and parking conditions as a result of the proposed project. The transportation analyses will account for increased demand resulting from known planned and anticipated area developments and roadway geometry changes. Detailed analyses will be prepared for transportation elements described in the draft scope. Next slide, please. Other technical areas of note include land use, zoning, and public policy, socioeconomic conditions, urban design and visual resources, greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, neighborhood character, and construction. The draft scope provides a more detailed outline of how each of the technical areas will be examined, and for each of the analytical areas identifies study areas, types of data to be gathered, how these data will be analyzed, and how potential impacts will be quantified. In addition, the draft EIS will include a mitigation chapter, which will describe mitigation measures to address significant adverse impacts that are identified in the technical analyses. Where significant adverse impacts cannot be mitigated, they will be described as unavoidable adverse impacts. Next slide, please. An alternatives chapter will be included in the draft EIS to evaluate alternative development proposals that may reduce or eliminate significant adverse impacts. The alternatives are usually defined when the full extent of a proposed project's impacts are determined. As of now, the draft EIS is expected to analyze a no action alternative, a no unmitigated impact alternative, and two alternatives that would result in an increase in the amount of community facility space. For the increased community facility alternatives, uses assumed for analysis purposes may include general community use space, medical offices, and an elementary school. In each case, the impacts of each alternative will be compared to the impacts of the proposed project. We will now turn the presentation back to the Department of City Planning for the public comment period of the scoping meeting.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to part 2 of the meeting. At this time, we'll be receiving testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and government agencies. Again, as a reminder, when it's your turn to speak, your name will be called, you will be promoted to panelist, and you will be allowed to unmute your microphone and turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period where it appears that you're no longer in the meeting. Do not be alarmed, as you'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If anyone is experiencing technical issues that prevent you from sharing your testimony today, we'll pause, move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen with our staff in the background, and we'll call your name at a later time. If you are having issues, please feel free to visit the how-to guides on the NYC Engage website for assistance. You can also feel free to hang up and call our assistance helpline at 877-853-5247. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 618-237-7396, and the password is 1. It does not appear that we have any speakers signed up in part 2 group of this meeting today. Just confirming with our staff here. Okay. So in that case, we will now proceed to part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the general public will be asked to speak for up to 3 minutes. A 3-minute time tracker will be displayed. So I'd like that to be displayed on the screen now. Again, after 3 minutes, you'll be asked to conclude your remarks. And we will now go to our speakers list. The first speaker is Renzo Ramos, and that person is joining us via Zoom. Welcome.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please begin.
Cool. Good afternoon, Chair Lago and members of the commission. My name is Renzo Ramos and I am a member of 32BJ. As you know, 32BJ is the largest property service union representing 75,000 property service workers across the city. We maintain, clean, and provide security services in buildings like the one being discussed at Wakefield Village. We estimate that this rezoning, which will allow the construction of over 1 million square feet that will be used for 1,262 units of income restricted housing, will lead to the creation of 20 new residential building service jobs. This rezoning is an opportunity for the commission and the city to insist that this development move forward with strong job standards. In examining the impact of this project, we hope that the commission will consider how it will affect the working conditions of building service workers. We believe any investigation of a project like this should consider whether the development will sustain wage standards in building service industry and provide options for doing so. We hope the environmental review process will take the issue of job quality for building service workers seriously. We believe that the best way to make sure that the developments like the one proposed have a positive impact on building service workers is for developers to make a formal commitment to pay the prevailing wage. While the developers have not yet made a credible commitment to providing prevailing wage building service jobs at this site, they have expressed interest in making such a commitment to the site's future building service workers. We know the development team has a vision to invest in this community. We hope to be able to support their plan. We respectfully request you to include wages as a part of your recommendation for this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your testimony today. Okay, I'm consulting our speakers list now. That was the only speaker that we had received that registered. At this time, we're going to take a brief pause and allow anyone who may have been listening in or joining us in person a chance to register to speak during this scoping meeting. And as a reminder, we will accept written testimony through Thursday, September 2nd, 2021 via mail or email. So we'll take now a 10-minute break and reconvene to see if anyone else has joined us who wishes to speak during the scoping meeting. Thank you. We'll be back at around 2:40. Okay, good afternoon and welcome back. You are again tuning in to the public scoping meeting for the Wakefield Village project. Again, for the record, the proposal seeker number is 22DCP008X. Again, my name is Stephanie Shalhoub, Deputy Director of the New York City Department of City Planning's Environmental Assessment and Review Division. We're currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. We will now check and see if anyone has signed up to speak during our recess. We do not have anyone else who has signed up to speak. And if no one else wishes to speak at this time, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting. If anyone had difficulty providing testimony today, registering or accessing the meeting, please recall that you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal through DCP's webpage. Our email address and mailing address are there on the Department of City Planning's webpage. The deadline for submitting written comments is Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. It is currently 2:40 p.m. and the public scoping meeting is now closed. Thanks, everyone.